Hello viewers, welcome to our lecture series on Indian ethos in management, and this lecture is under a special segment for symbolic expression. We have with us Ms. Manisha for symbolic expression, and this is going to be part 3 of our lectures on Indian model of management. In the previous 2 lectures of mine, I gave you a brief idea about what exactly we mean by Indian model of management. We were going through the Indian model of management, what is called as corporate Gita, that is looking at Bhagavad Gita from the perspective of corporate entities. We had also discussed briefly about the 4 areas of management theory and practice, and now we'll talk about analytical models of Gita. So, the 4 areas of management theory and practice which we discussed in the previous lectures were stress management, the second one was psycho-spiritual improvement in work environment, the third one was business ethics and human values, and the fourth one was enlightened leadership. So, these are the 4 broad areas of management theory and practice where the Indian model of management is very much relevant, and we had a brief discussion on these 4 topics in the previous 2 lectures of mine. Now, coming to the theory of self development, and there we discussed about 4 S. S is representing the 4 important models of self development and growth, starting from the first stage, that is in consonance with the requirements of today's society. We had identified 4 stages of self development and growth, and those 4 stages were student or the learning phase, the second one was secular phase, third one was sacro-secular phase, and the last one was spiritual phase. So, we had already discussed about these 4 phases where we talked about the way the self is being developed. So, every learner has to start with the student phase, and eventually we lead to the we reach to the stage of what we call as spiritual phase. So, the theory of self development is very much important if we really wish to understand the Indian model of management and its relevance for dealing with the problems which we witness in corporate entities. Now, here we are going to talk about the values addition. The theory of business is not dealing with only adding addition of one value, rather we are willing to talk about values addition. And from Bhagavad Gita, we can also envision a theory of business relevant for the modern context, and it can be summed up as value addition with that of values addition. What it indicates? It actually indicates that performance of any company or any corporate organization, it should be seen not merely in terms of value addition, but in terms of number of values which we have added. Suppose if you are adding one value to the business process of any business enterprise, that is not sufficient. We should follow a tradition of adding n number of values into the business organization's processes. Rather, we would say that for each and every process or activity you perform, you should add at least one value into them. Because suppose if you have added values into the functioning of HR department, but not in the department of finance or in the department of marketing or in the department of international trade, then of course that is not going to serve your purpose. One department is actually leading with some values which they have inherited from their top management, but what about others? So, values addition is something which is the order of the day, or I would say which is actually the need of the hour. It is needed. Now, when we talk about corporate Gita, a very basic question comes to our mind, that can the shlokas mentioned in Bhagavad Gita be used in corporate context? Answer is yes. The relevance of Gita in corporate context, it has received attention of several scholars and practitioners. Previously also I told you about the different researchers, academicians and practitioners, those who are working in the field of this domain, where they are trying to explain the shlokas of Gita in corporate context. the way it can be used for the business purposes. The impetus in this direction has been provided by many spiritual teachers. Not only spiritual teachers, but also the top shot researchers. Here I would like to give you certain names like Swami Ranganathananda, Swami Jitat Mananda, and there are various other names who have actually interpreted the shlokas of Gita from the corporate perspective, the way it can be used by business houses. Additionally, various scholars and practitioners, they have also contributed to this area, and they actually come up with 4 approaches to it. The first approach is basically of empirical testing, the second approach is of corporate shlokas, third approach is of revisiting Gita, and the fourth one is, which is the most important one, that is called new age management models, where we try to look at new age management models combining the learnings or lessons from Gita for management, administration and leadership. So, in empirical testing, I told you previously also in brief, but here we are explaining it, that the way we go for empirical testing. Here, as a human being, we all know that we don't believe unless we feel. So, feeling is believing unless we test. So, as a researcher, we are using this first approach for testing empirical relevance of the knowledge being provided in this text, and this approach can be referred to as empirical applications of the concepts provided in Bhagavad Gita. If we look at the leading work in this area, in this field, we find that the work by Chakravarti, it provides us empirical information on corporate applications of various concepts from Gita. He has taken several concepts from Gita to explain its relevance for the top management, for the middle management and for the operating level management. The author has tested the applicability of several ideas through OD interventions, which is based on his framework of managerial effectiveness and quality of work life. And this research actually continued from 1987 to 1993 and eventually till 1998. If we look at second approach, there the different shlokas which are provided in Gita, in Bhagavad Gita, they have been interpreted by various scholars from the perspective of corporate entity. And this approach can be referred to as compilations and interpretations, that they have compiled it and they have interpreted it, interpreted those shlokas from the business perspective, that in what manner it can be relevant for managers and other professionals. Many scholars and practitioners from several various fields, they have interpreted relevant shlokas and ideas from Gita and they have shown their relevance in corporate and social context. So, needless to mention their name, but those researchers, they have actually tried to interpret those shlokas and their relevance from the perspective of business enterprise. I will be taking some of the shlokas in the due course of our discussion on the topic, and then I would tell you the way these shlokas are being used by business enterprises. Coming to the third approach, which is basically revisiting Gita. You are trying to create a vision about your business enterprise with the help of the shlokas given in Bhagavad Gita. In this revisiting approach, the concepts from Gita have been revisited and reinterpreted in contemporary context. That with the passage of time, the kind of challenges we are witnessing in 21st century, how can it be revisited and reinterpreted in the contemporary world? As on date, in what manner I can use those text, those ideas, those learnings which are provided in the text. For instance, there is a researcher called Ranchan. In his work on Gita, he provides interesting insights on ideas and images for active imagination. So, the author wanted to say that these ideas can be used for active imagination also. and has highlighted the significance of Gita for psychotherapy and considers the preacher of Gita, that is Lord Krishna, as a psychotherapist. So imagine the text which is regarded as one of the spiritual texts is now being used from the perspective of psychotherapy. But here in this lecture, my focus will be on the fourth approach, that is new age management models, the way they are being developed. And it aims at developing new management models where the origin point is the text of Bhagavad Gita. So the ideas emanates from there, but they are being developed from the present day perspective, that is keeping in mind the challenges of 21st century, that is as on date whatever challenge I am witnessing, how to make good use of those rules and regulations, those principles, those guidelines for solving the present day problems. There is a very leading researcher called Subhash Sharma. He has developed a number of such models. He uses the idea of East-West blend and offers management models which have direct relevance for corporate enterprises. The blend which he offers is basically offering the models which are very much relevant for corporate entities as on date. And if I have to give some examples of those models, there is a model called OSHA model, which we have discussed previously. The Najarji, that is representing negative energy, Najarji to synergy grid, that is also given by the same author. The Manas, Buddhi and Ahankar model, which is known as the MBA model, Manas, Buddhi and Ahankar model, is also given by the same author, and some of these ideas they have been tested in the corporate context as well, and surprisingly or interestingly, I would say, they have been found useful by corporate managers when it comes to solve the problems of corporate enterprises. And they have found it, the analysis of causes for high negative energy or Najarji in organizations, they have found it very much useful in dealing with those situations, those problems where the conflict arises. There is another researcher called Banerjee, and he has developed the model of mother leadership. You must have heard about the servant leadership. You must have heard about the autocratic, democratic and free reign style of leadership. But this is another model which is classified under Indian model of management called mother leadership. And the root of it is, if you look at the base of it, it is in the ideas from Bhagavad Gita and other relevant Indian scriptures. And Banerjee have actually eloquently explained the concept of mother leadership and the way it can be used in business enterprises. The four approaches which are being used here is the empirical approach, which we have discussed, shloka compilation approach, where we compile the shlokas, we interpret, reinterpret. Then comes revisioning approach, where we are revisioning and eventually we go for building models or new concept development approach we adopt. If we combine them together, all these approaches, they have contributed significantly to the growing literature on corporate application of ideas from Bhagavad Gita. In one way or the other, all four approaches are significant. We can't say that first approach is the best one because it is following empirical approach and last one is not significant. All four are contributing. They are complementary to each other. They are not competitive in nature. So they have contributed significantly to the growing literature of management, Indian models of management, which is also called as corporate Gita. Now, to understand the relevance of all this, we need to look at the analytical models of Gita, the way it functions, the way it works, the way you can apply it in your business enterprise. Coming to analytical models of Gita. Till now, we have discussed about the relevance of Gita, that is corporate Gita, in offering a theory of society and ideas for corporate applications, there are certain analytical models as well. Like the first one, which is known as the Guna dynamics model. The Guna here represents the merits dynamics model, you can say. The second one is the Dharma Adharma dialectic model, where we are trying to find the dialects of Dharma and Adharma in the form of a model. The third one is divine like and demonic type classification of human beings. Like there is a person who is divine like, there is a person who is demonic type. So, how do we classify the human beings into these two categories? And these three models, when combined together, they actually offer a very strong analytical framework for analysis of not only a society but also a business enterprise, regardless of its technological advancement, no matter how advanced you are in terms of technology. But these three models, which actually form part of analytical framework or analytical model of Gita, they contribute significantly. They are very much significant. So, understanding them is very much important if we wish to know about the Indian model of management. So, let us start with the first model, which is known as the Guna model, Guna dynamics model. It actually analyzes the dynamics of the three gunas. If we read the Indian scriptures and we talk about the nature of human beings, the way they behave, the discussion of three gunas, that is three merits, they always come in front of us. And these gunas are called as tamas, rajas and sattva. We call it tamas, rajas and sattva, tamasic, rajasic and sattvic. Now, let me first elaborate what do we mean by the term tamas, rajas and sattva. Tamasic is basically indicative of self-interest. Suppose as a human being, I always talk about my self-interest. I am working in a company and I always talk about my own achievement, my salary, my promotion, my success. It means the component of tamas in my personality is very prominent, because it is being reflected in my behavior, in my talks, in my thinking. So, my actions, my thinking and my deeds all are targeted towards this self interest. So, that guna, that tamas is also a gun, that is also a merit, and that is prominent in my personality. But suppose if I talk about the enlightened self interest, I feel that along with my own personal goals, the goals of organization should also be achieved. It means I am getting the prominence of another merit or guna, that is called rajasic, which indicates the enlightened self interest. When I say that I am working for the attainment of corporate goals where I am working, and eventually with the attainment of that goal, my personal goal will also be achieved. It means I am acting as a enlightened person who is talking about enlightened self interest. So, this enlightenment is basically reflective of this rajasic good, the prominence of the rajasic good or rajas, what we call. The third one is sattvic, which indicates the enlightened collective interest. Suppose as an employee of a company, I talk about not only the attainment of organizational goals, but I also discuss or I also show my concern about the social welfare, about what happens to the society with the product which we are offering from our company. And if that is prominent, it means it is a reflection of prominence of the sattvic guna in my personality. So, after elaborating or understanding these three gunas, now I will tell you about the way this guna dynamic works, the way it functions. This dynamics is presented in shloka 10 of chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita, where it says that sattva asserts itself by predominating over rajas and tamas, that it has a tendency of predominating over rajas and tamas. Rajas predominates over sattva, and tamas, and tamas tries to dominate sattva and rajas. So, if we conclude these three statements, what comes to us? Each of these merits or gunas, they have a tendency of dominating other two. Sattva is asserting to dominate over rajas and tamas, rajas is dominating over sattva and tamas tries to dominate sattva and rajas. So, each one of them, they are trying to dominate the other two, predominate the other two. So, they have a tendency of working like this, and all three are powerful, all three are equally powerful. It is up to us in what manner we have channelized them. So, this dynamics can also be presented in the form of a matrix analysis of these three gunas, and it can be used for the purpose of prediction. You can make a prediction that which gun is going to dominate in which case. In certain cases sattva may dominate, in certain cases rajas may dominate. So, what will happen when we have this predictive analysis matrix? So, when the intensity of tamas is higher than sattva and rajas, there is lot of negative energy or energy. So, the intensity of tamas, if it is dominating other two, what will happen? You will find lot of negative energy spreading in the organization. But when the intensity of sattva is higher than other two, that is rajas and tamas, you would find lot of synergy in the organization. You find each and every person working in the organization, they are working collectively. But suppose there is an intensity of tamas, what will happen? Lot of negative energy will actually prevail. So, what Bhagavad Gita suggests for business enterprise? It suggests a transformation from tamas to rajas to sattva by the way of increase in the intensity of sattva and reduction in the intensity of tamas. So, if we try to increase the intensity of sattva, making it more powerful and reducing the power of intensity of tamas, what will happen? We would find an organization where you would feel that the leadership with which we are working is transforming the business enterprise. So, this model is very much useful not only for the analysis of current status, but also for the future state of your society. You can make a prediction, and as I told you that these three gunas, they have the inner tendency to dominate others. So, if tamas dominates in a society and its institutions, it would lead to lot of negative energy, thereby leading to disorders in society, and the same is the case of business enterprise. So, my dear learners, in this way I have explained you this guna dynamics model. The remaining two models I will discuss with you in the next lecture of mine. I hope you must have enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.